my privilege to introduce to you guys. Please give it up for Jordan Young, AKA DJ Swivel.
A lot of people. It's full. I like it. A lot of Beyonce fans, I hear.
Exactly. So, thank you so much, man. I mean, just the fact that you're an alumni, you know, you've been through a lot of things that I think these guys are looking forward to going through. And it's also nice to know that, you know, you're human, man. You know, you've gone through the trials and tribulations that...
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's just nice to know that anything is really possible, you know, and if you're consistent and you're passionate, you know, you'll get to where you want to be. I think it'd be good to start off with just kind of walking through briefly your experiences from when you were in Full Sail, when you were a student, and then kind of just how you got where you are now.
Well, I'm originally from Toronto, so I moved to Full Sail from Toronto? Okay, that's what's up. Yeah, so I came down here. This was the school. Actually, when I was in high school, I had learned about Full Sail and heard about all the great things that were happening here, and I wanted to go. I knew really early what I wanted to do, so I was fortunate. I have a twin brother, and he had no idea. He did a 4-year college and then did something else, and he only figured it out a few years ago. So I was very fortunate with that. I came down, I got through the program, and I moved straight to New York as soon as I graduated, literally 2 days after. And I had done some networking down here, so I had lined up an internship. I started there. Didn't really like it. It was at a studio, but it was primarily like jazz music. It wasn't really what I wanted. So I quit, which for me was a little scary because I didn't, all I had was a 1-year visa, and I knew that I wasn't gonna have, like Drake wasn't around. I wasn't gonna be able to have the same career in Toronto that I could in New York. So I had basically 10 months left to figure it out and have something lined up. So I was actually dealing with the placement program here, and I heard about an internship with a guy named Duro, who I don't know if any of you guys know, but he owns Desert Storm Records, and a world-famous mix engineer. He's done everything, Jay-Z,
Beastie Boys.
I mean, there's, yeah, too many things to list. He's literally mixed everything. Yeah, Beastie Boys. So I went, I interviewed for him. He had said he filled the position, and 2 weeks later I got a call, so I lucked out. And I started working for him nonstop. It was a really small studio. It was him, an assistant, and myself, and I was basically just running, getting food, and you know, doing all the stuff that a GA needs to do. And then 5 months into it, his assistant moved on to another job, so I inherited the assistant position, which is how a lot of people, you know, work their way up. Somebody's sick, you're in the studio, you're the only person who can fill in, and then you build a relationship with artists that way. So 5 months in, I became his assistant, and then 2 months after that, Fab started working on his album. And I was interning unpaid the whole time, 7 months and, you know, 100-hour weeks. It was pretty crazy. So at that point, I had said, you know, I did all this work, let me engineer for Fab. And he gave me that opportunity, and we had built a rapport just being around the studio, and that was the first real project I got, and that was about a year after I graduated. So I was his engineer. So I really lucked out. That wasn't, you know, I know some assistants who are really great, super talented, and they've been doing it for, you know, a number of years. So it's really about being in the right place at the right time and you know, creating your own sort of opportunities. So yeah, that was the first. That was, you know,
the preparation that goes in with that. Like when you know how they say success is opportunity meets preparation. You know, we hear that over and over and over again. What do you feel? Just not to segue too much here, but when you were in school, like up to that point, when you feel like it was luck, but in some way you have to contribute. You have to say there was something that you did.
Yeah,
that got
I mean, you make your own luck. I mean, for example, when I got the internship, I actually got a call from his assistant, or an email rather, saying, we loved your resume, but you mentioned you were a DJ and DJs leak music. So we don't want to hire you, but I'm just giving you some advice. Take the DJ off your resume. And I begged him. I said, no, I would never do that. Let me come in. Just meet me. I'll prove you wrong. And the persistence paid off. He let me come in, and that led to the internship. So, yeah, I lucked out, but you sort of make your own luck. I sort of just pushed the point that I wanted to be there. So, and that one thing led to another, and, got to do Fab and move on and, work with a bunch of great artists, and then,
And the
later
rest
on
is history.
be. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you did bring something with you, which is...
I did. I brought a session that I mixed from Beyonce. It's called I Care, from the album 4. I actually brought 2 sessions, but we'll start with this one and we'll see how the time goes.
I was going to mention real briefly, we do have microphones up for questions, but it would be great if we could direct the questions more towards the session, because as we all know, mixing is something that is really subjective, and we could talk about it for hours. But if we think more about what he's showing on the screen, we'll probably get more out of it. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, so I don't know what the best way to go through this is. Maybe you guys can help me out. Should I just start at the top, how a mix starts?
What about your first, when you first received this session, what did you get, a rough mix?
Well, that's the thing. So this is a little bit different. Normally, if I'm mixing a record and I had nothing to do with the recording, I get a song and I listen to the demo and I do my own take on it. But I was her recording engineer too, so I recorded the song and mixed it. So it was being mixed all along until we get to the end, and then, all right, we have to hand in the album to mastering tomorrow, so now we need a final mix.
Do you find that's difficult when you're in the creative process, or at least in the tracking process initially, and then getting into the mixing process? Do you find that sometimes works against you, or do you like that?
It's a little difficult with her, only because she works so much and she doesn't take any breaks. We'll be in the studio for 16 hours and I'm eating while I'm comping a vocal. There's no breaks at all. So with her, it's a little difficult because I don't have an 8-hour window to sit and tweak a record and mix and whatever. And by the time she leaves, it's 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I'm ready to go sleep anyways.
So on a technical side, you open up the session. You've finished tracking, you're at that point. Where do you start exactly? What's your workflow?
Well, every song's different. So with this song, it was produced by Jeff Basker, and then of course Beyonce and Shay Taylor, who is sort of the day-to-day producer on the album, they add their own touches. So Jeff gave us the record, and then we added live drums. This is all live drums down here, and there's a baritone sax on here and some guitars, and so she finishes the production. But it started with this track from Jeff, and I'll play maybe 30 seconds of the song, 20 seconds of the song, and then I'll pull it apart. Here we go.
How you hurt me, baby, but you don't care. Now I'm crying and deserted, baby, but you don't care. Ain't nobody tell me this is love, but you're immune to all my pain. Need you to tell me this is love. You don't care, well that's okay. Well, I care. I know you don't care too much, but
All right, so we'll get through the whole song after, but thank you.
Sounds amazing.
Thank you. So. Now this, a few things have been substituted here. Some of the reverbs are different. I use a 960 on the actual mix, and obviously we don't have that here. So this is almost the mix. There's a few things that are different. But, so it started with Jeff, and when I arrange a song to mix, I usually like to have the drums up top, then the primary instruments, the rhythm section, the bass, In this case, there's a Juno pad, which is sort of the main instrument, and then all the supporting instruments, and then lead vocals and background vocals, and then all the way at the bottom, I have all my send returns, a master fader and send returns. So yeah, so once you have a session organized, for me, when I start a mix, I really need to have everything in a place where I know what I'm listening to, you know, where it's at. If I need to hear something, I kind of know where it's at. Everything's labeled mostly correctly. And once that's ready, then I usually start the mix. And depending on what type of record it is, will depend on where I start on a mix. So in this case, it's really drum driven. So I started with the drums and then built around that and eventually got to the vocals. Whereas something like a ballad, I might start with a vocal and a piano and then build everything else around that. So let me just sort of solo the program drums. So this is all from Jeff. So, you know, a basic pattern. These kicks were added later. This was just more something I added in the mix just to support his kick drum. You don't really hear what they're doing. You more feel what they're doing. So it's not.
Do you mention that to the producer, or you just kind of do it?
No,
in a transparent way?
That was something I just did, and I don't. He may not have been happy about it, but. I mean, but there, you know, at this point we have a 1-day deadline. He's not in the studio. I can't reach him. So you make a judgment call. And at the end of the day, if Beyonce approves it, that's all that matters. So
they're feeling it. Yeah.
Not that the producer's opinion does. It certainly matters, but you know, somebody's got the final call. And with her, it's usually not the producer.
Gotcha.
So these are kicks that I added that are just meant to support his kick. And they just add a little thump. Because his is a little more boomy. You know, it's got a big reverb on it. So this just gets that punch that you want to feel. Let me see what else.
Now, if you were to, because you were mentioning like when you work on a ballad, you might start with the vocal. This kind of song's more drum driven.
Yeah, this was drum driven. So I started with the program drums.
And what did you feel as being, was it then the live drums was essentially the next thing, or what did you feel was the next thing to tackle?
Yeah, so since it started with program drums and we added live drums later, you're never going to get live drums to match up to program drums perfectly. Nobody's timing is that perfect. And when you're mixing, you really need it to line up because you want every hit to be in phase, and you want it to, you know, you want to feel every hit. Even a couple milliseconds off, 2 kick drums, you know, now you're going to lose the whole kick drum. So that was one of the most time-consuming things with this, was taking these live drums that we did and literally lining up every single hit to the program stuff. So, and you know, to save time, I took like loops and repeated them. But you can see, I mean, there's definitely parts in here where all these little kicks are nudged, and especially down here too. There's a lot of even toms and little things are moved perfectly onto the beat so that you feel it. So let me play the live drums actually, so you can get a feel for them. There's a giant reverb on it. She wanted like an 80s vibe to the song, so we put like a big, you know, a gated plate on it. Yeah. Yeah. So now this is just the live, and then once we add the program stuff, you can start to feel, and it all lines up perfectly. You really need to have that. So, I don't know if any of this is interesting or, you know.
No, we actually, as a...
And yeah, I don't know if you guys want me to get into each individual track. The reason why this is... the reason why I find this less important is because every song is different. So when I show you an EQ here, you're not going to be able to take this and use it on something else because that song may need something else.
And you can just reaffirm that, like we were discussing backstage, is that live drums and live instruments are still a huge integral thing in music, even in something that has production on it.
Yeah.
Would you say it's like a 50-50 with your experience with what you
I mean, it
worked
depends.
on?
When I started, a lot of the artists I was working with were hip hop artists, so Fabulous and people like that. So in those cases, very rarely is there any live instrumentation on it. Some producers might pull some things in, but when you're dealing with more pop artists, especially someone like B, who has every resources at her disposal. I mean, we had the Fela Kuti band come in from Broadway, 22-piece band, and I didn't find out about it until the day of. And we're setting up a 22-piece, band to record in the studio. So with her, you get to do. She's sort of like the ideal artist to work for if you really love engineering and recording and all that, because you get to do everything, and there's no expense spared. And if we need to fly somebody in to do something, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, as far as like EQs and stuff, I'll run through it, quickly.
If there was anything that if you remember hearing that needed to be fixed or tweaked, like maybe talk about your thought process.
To be honest, I don't remember every little detail. I'm sure if I went through here, I would. Most of this stuff is basic, just giving a little boost at 60 hertz just to get some thump on it, and a little bit of brightness, and not too much compression. There's only, what is it?
They're all writing down your settings right now.
You can have them, trust me. It's not going to be helpful. Yeah, so that's most of the drum stuff. Let me see if there's anything. Here's the toms. There's a bit of a spread on them just to open up the the image on the on the track. I think there's a block. So that's all that. The Juno is the main instrument, and actually there's nothing on this at all. A lot of times you don't need anything. I see a lot of sessions from sort of younger mixers or engineers who are just experimenting and trying stuff, and I see like 9 plugins on a single channel. And every once in a while you may need to do that, but it's so rare. I've seen sessions where like every insert is used, and I usually question what the reason is, and sometimes, a lot of times it's producers too who do that. And then I'll go through and I'll mute all of them, and I'll realize that, oh, well, only one is really doing something that you need. The rest you could have accomplished with, one EQ or whatever. So this Juno, it didn't need anything, so, that's just left it as is.
It seems difficult sometimes just to let something be as it is. And
yeah,
not
you
do
want to
something
feel
just
like
for
you
the
added
sake of-
something to it, but at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about the artist and the final product.
Remember that.
So, yeah, unless you
That's a really good
really
point.
think it's necessary, it's probably not. If you have to question yourself, it's probably not. So I don't know what the sound is, just a little sound effect. Yeah, there's just a low pass or a high pass filter on it, rather. Let's see some of the instruments. So there's a nice move. I have a R bass on it at 60 hertz, just adding a little low end and rumble to it. And I took a little bit of brightness off and even boost, what is this, 150 maybe, 140? So here's a keyboard, a lot of spread on it. I don't know if you guys can really hear that out there, if the image is right, but again, a little high pass, just get some of the low frequencies out of there. And a lot of this is cleanup. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's just,
making things work together.
yeah, once you take out a lot of the low end, you give yourself more headroom, and you leave room for the kicks and the bass that needs to occupy that space. So,
Do you find that a lot of times, not a lot, but in the past, you've gotten projects that were maybe difficult to work with due to the arrangement, like they gave you, the low kick drum, the 808, the heavy synth, and the bass line
that's
all at once?
my biggest pet peeve. Like, and it's always hip hop producers. And the song might sound amazing, but you have a bass, an 808, and a kick, and they're all fighting for the same space. Then you have to make a decision: what is more important? is it the 808? Is that going to be the driving bass, in the song, or is it the bass line? And maybe you get it where the bass is, in a different frequency and they can live together, but usually not. So I find myself having to make creative decisions on what is better suited for the record. And, sometimes the producer will come back and say, no, I got to hear both. And then, you got to just find a middle ground, right?
I was just
make everyone happy. A lot of it's,
In this track, at what stage did you start working on her vocals? Was it something that you gravitated towards after drums, or do you remember
Well, no,
that?
we were working on vocals the whole time. So with this song, I got the beat. We got the song from Jeff Basker. Then she cuts the song. We'll do maybe 4 or 5 lead vocal passes. And then we'll comp a lead vocal together, her and I. And then she'll add all the backgrounds and stuff afterwards. Once the song was cut,
backgrounds.
yeah, here's all the background vocals, and this is actually a smaller session. The other session I have is double the size. There's got to be 100 vocals on it. I actually have one session with her. It's a song you'll never hear, but we did a vocal stack of 120 vocals. She just wanted to try it, and she's one of those artists that if she has an idea, she'll sit and record vocals for 4 hours until she finishes the idea, and then she'll say, I hate the song, let's not use it. So we cut the vocals. Once the vocals were in, then we did the additional production stuff, the live drums here, there's a baritone saxophone. She loved the baritone saxophone for this album. I'm not sure why. It's great. It has such a cool tone to it, but it's such a first time I've ever recorded baritone sax for sure. I'll play it for you.
No, you don't care too much.
And you can just
I still care.
so you can hear it under there. It's not a primary thing, but you can definitely hear, adds a little texture to it. And so we added, and then we did all the overdubs, and then at that point, I'm still recording the rest of the album. So then I'm mixing and nudging drums, when she's having lunch or dinner or something. So it's just getting it to a point where we're ready to, hand the record in.
You're always working.
Yeah, for sure. So let me see what else is in this.
When you recorded her vocals, were you, and again, this is probably thinking back a ways for you, but do you recall, were you 100% happy when you went to the mix? Was it like, okay, the EQ, the compression, everything's there as needed? Or do you typically find yourself having to tweak things?
I'll do some tweaks, but with her, the great thing is the vocal is always on point. You never have to worry about a bad vocal, and as long as I did my job recording it properly and it's not distorted or whatever, then you never have to worry about a bad vocal. She's not ever using auto-tune, so I don't have to worry about tuning anything or melodyning a vocal, which is usually takes the longest. So yeah, with her, the vocal part's the easiest part. I mean, we cut a song in an hour, 2 hours maybe.
Work with a pro.
Yeah, I mean, she's the best. I was very lucky when it comes to that. But then we'll spend 8 hours trying to find the right drum tone or something. So that's where most of the time is spent on her record was, the production side of things. Like I think this song we worked on for 6 months. This didn't happen overnight. This was like, we'll start it, then we'll work on a few other songs, and a week later she'll come back to it, and then we'll work on something else, and then, by the time you're done, you've worked on you've heard this song 1,000 times. Yeah. So, you kind of know, and every time you work on it, you get it a little bit closer to where it needs to be. So working with her, it's a little bit different than if you're just getting a mix and you need to finish it.
One of the things we're always telling our students is how important it is to listen to other music, or at least something that's relevant to what you're working on at the time. And I mean, you're working on a Beyonce track, but do you still find yourself finding something that reminds you of it, that gives you either the energy, so that way you can take that and add it into your mix, add that into the song? Or was this something where it just kind of like grew itself,
You mean like sonically, like where the album went?
Kind of for
or-
anything, like you hear heavy drums. Do you think, okay, there's this Timberland track I know of that?
Yeah, I mean, I take inspiration from everything, and I listen to all kinds of music. So, sometimes you hear the best guitar sounds on like a rock record or even a country record or something. And
Well, like you mentioned, the baritone sax. Did you kind of just go
yeah,
with
I
how
had
you
no
felt?
idea. I don't really listen to jazz music, and yeah, that was a new experience. But at the end of the day, you listen to a song, and every instrument, every track has a place. It has a space in the song, and as a mixer, your job is to figure out what that space is. Is it going to be back in the mix, a lot of reverb? Is it going to be right up front? Is it going to be, where does it sit, frequency-wise, space-wise? Is it in the front? Is it in the back? So that's really all your job is. So even though I've never worked with a baritone sax, I can listen to it and see where it's going to fit in. So that just comes naturally, mixing anything, right? Let me run through the other tracks that are in here just so.
Definitely.
Yeah, that just sits there. The tone of the guitar that was recorded was great, so there wasn't a whole lot of, I didn't have to reamp it or anything like that, just a little bit of EQ.
I care. I know you don't care too much, but I still.
And to me, it wasn't even one of the more important parts of the record, so it's just kind of, you feel it more than you hear it. And yeah, that's most of the song. We'll run through the vocals just so you can kind of hear. I mean, with her, the vocals are easy. Like I said, there's no tune, just a little bit of de-essing. With her, it's usually not too bad. Some artists, you need to de-ess a lot, and they have a lot of like schmutz in there when they cut. She doesn't. She's just a pro. Her vocals usually perfect. So,
Do you find with her there's less automation needing to be done because of her vocal training?
actually, well, more automation. So when I mix a lead vocal, actually any vocal, I'm doing vocal rides through the whole thing. So I'll do a little bit of compression and get it sounding where I need it to be. And then I'll manually, with a fader, just listen through, and I'll listen to this line 100 times and just moving it, little nudges. Actually, you can see that this is where it was left off. I have it in trim and touch, which means the fader is always at 0. So I can listen, and if I need to just boost it a dB, I can push it, drop it, whatever I need to do. So with her, because she's so dynamic, you usually have to do a lot of smoothing out on the vocals. And even recording in, I'll kind of hand automate. Yeah, so with her, I use the Avalon 737 on the vocal. And the reason I use that is because it has a smooth input knob, as opposed to like a 1073 where you have those 2 dB clicks.
Right.
I can't do a 2 dB click in the middle of a vocal. But I can, if I know she's going to get loud and hit the compressor too hard, I'll drop it while she's recording and then pull it back up. So I find myself doing a lot of that with her, because she'll go from a quiet note to just belting in 2 lines. And she doesn't, it's all in one take, so.
Do you ever find yourself tracking louder portions on other tracks versus quieter portions, or are you just breaking it? Is it song specific pretty much? It's one of those things you can't generalize.
Oh, you mean cutting louder portions separately?
Yeah.
Sometimes, if there's a need, but if it's a line where maybe going into a hook starts low and she gets really dynamic, you can't really ask her to, all right,
Don't
stop
break it
now,
up.
and
Yeah.
you just got to let her sing. Right. So that's my job to fix it. So let's listen to the lead and see what's on it.
I told you how you hurt me, baby, but you don't care.
So one thing, that delay throw actually has a lot more reverb on it, but I don't have the right reverb. But anyways, I use a 960. Let me take it out of trim so you can see. 960A here, this is just a large hall. And C is like silica beads. It's like a really bright, long reverb tail that just adds a little sizzle to it. And there's, I think, a simple quarter note delay, or is it eighth note delay?
I told you how you hurt.
Yeah, just a quarter note delay. a little slap delay, and then this, I have it called medium delay, but that's the throw. So you'll see, I think
But
it,
you don't care.
right? And I think there's, yeah, like you can see there's throws all through the song for individual lines that we want delays on. So that's kind of the lead. One thing that's really interesting about this song is in the bridge, there's a guitar solo that she mimics with her voice, which I've never heard before, but let's see if we can pull it up. She kills it.
Yep. Couldn't imagine
So-
seeing you there tracking that, and you're just like, yep.
She really is the best. So with that, we wanted to make her vocal like a guitar. So what I did is I doubled it, and I put an amp on one of her. So you have this like guitar ampy vocal under the clean one. So I thought that was something interesting about the session. Yeah.
I think we call
Thank
that
you.
taking it to church,
I can't
right?
take credit for that at all. I can't take credit for that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of the things that you do as a mixer, a lot of us will agree that it's very subtle. It's just a nuance, like what you did with the amp with her voice. It's more
Yeah.
felt.
I mean, with her, certainly you're just, I mean, the production's done. You're just enhancing what's there. But, you know, other times I get songs and the artist or the producer will say, do your thing. Like, don't listen to I want you to be creative. If you want to swap out drums, swap out drums. And I do it all the time. I'm a producer too. I write my own records. And so I do a lot of swapping drums and things like that. And with her, it's actually great. I get to do that a little bit because I was the recording engineer. You know, we had freedom to be able to add things and change things and whatever. And at the end of the day, either she's going to like it or not. If she doesn't, you go back. And if she likes it, then...
Was this one of those records that you feel like you had more freedom on?
Well, I mean, like I added some kicks in you know, just to, you know, and just make it knock a little bit more. But the tone was already set from the original record, and you know, I think I came up with the drum tone, like the big reverb snares and whatnot.
So I guess that brings us to the background vocals.
Yeah, so the background
Which is
vocals.
massive.
Let's see. So the hook, well, here's a hook lead, and this goes along with
Well,
back.
I care. I know you don't care too much, but I still care. La 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 la. Oh, I care. I know you don't care too much, but I still care. La 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 la.
So just three different
Awesome.
layers. So we have our lead layer, and that's processed one way. And there's you know, little vocal rides on it where there needs to be. Then you have your main background section, and then you have these like the baby sort of ad-lib stacks. So the hook's actually not that complicated. There's, you know, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, you know, 12 tracks, which isn't very much, especially when you're considering it's 3 different sections. Let's see, what do we have in the bridge? It looks like there's a lot here. So this is a 4-part harmony. Let's go through them one at a time.
Are you guys stacking 4 times per part?
Yeah, 4.
Okay.
Sometimes we'll do 3, but when I record background vocals, I like to line them all up, get them, you know, the fades on everything, you know, somewhat equal, and what's great is she's perfect at doubling, so there's not a whole lot of nudging and chopping and whatnot. And when I pan background vocals, I don't like to do 100, just 100 everywhere. I like to sort of do 40, 80, 60, 100, 90, 50.
You're making space through panning.
Yeah, just put them, if I have 20 vocals, I like to have them all through the stereo field. And then if I need a little more spread, which I do, look, I spread it a lot on there. But I find if you have some overlap and then you spread it, it's a more unison sounding background.
Kind of glues them together a little bit.
Yeah. So some people like the hard pan, 100 left, 100 right. I just don't usually do it. So let's go through. It's a low one. Really great backgrounds, Yeah, sure. Well, let me play. And this is just doing a counter melody, this last one. So maybe that's easier to see. I like to have certain things color coordinated, just so I know what they are. But that's the mix. That's and I have all my sends back here I'm using a Lex Hall. These are sort of replacing the 960 that I originally used on it. What's on here? This is like for a gated reverb, so there's like a gate. Yeah, no, yeah. That's a plate with a gated reverb behind it, like a gate. Here's the silica beads one, and then this is just a room, which I don't even think I used. I just pulled it in from a template. And then the delays are really simple. I mean, I'm using the Avid, the DigiDesign delays. They're nothing too crazy. Although I really like the H delay now as sort of my new go-to delay. I don't know if you guys use that one, but
Waves one, right?
Yeah, the Waves H delay. It's got a nice tone to it. Just reverb on the delay, and slap delay is just a really simple, get a little spread on a lead vocal. And what else do we have here? I don't even know what. Oh, this is the drum verb. Okay. Which again is just a D verb and an SSL channel. So it's not that complicated. At least, well, I don't think it is, but. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. If you feel free to interrupt.
Well, you said you brought another session with you, but if you want, we can just kind of talk a little bit about just sort of this one and maybe working with her in general. Does she's working with a vocal producer, or is she producing all of her own vocals?
No, she produced all her own vocals. She doesn't need a vocal producer. Yeah.
And you can hear it.
Yeah. And sometimes a producer will ask her to do certain things, and if she likes it, she'll do it. But for the most part, even from Destiny's Child days up until now, she has a really unique, her backgrounds are stacked a certain way. So if a producer gives a finished song with backgrounds or whatever, she's kind of going to listen to it, get an idea, and then scrap it and do
her thing,
her own. And it might incorporate some of what the producer did or the writer did, and then her own stuff. So that's really what makes it a Beyonce record is she adds her own touch to all the vocals, and she'll rewrite lyrics, and she's really, really hands-on in these sessions. She's not just sitting back and...
Probably a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah, it's great. It's, sort of the dream job, right?
Nice.
So certainly as an engineer.
Let's grab a couple questions, and then we'll talk a little bit more. What's up?
How you doing? I have a question about the throw delay you put on her leads, I think it was.
Yeah, the delay throw that you did.
The delay throw.
Yeah,
what's up?
Yes. So you automated that, correct?
Yeah. So
was that a send, or you had it as an insert, or was it a send just directly for that individual vocal?
It's a send. So yeah, it's on the send here, and it's just a level automation. Normally I'll do a mute automation, but in this case, level made more sense because if you notice, all through they're a little bit different, and even this one has like a, like it fades off. I'm not sure why it does, but I'm sure there's a reason for it.
And that doesn't affect any other tracks that were sent to that same plugin, or was it just
to that same
specifically for
throw?
that?
I don't think so. Let me see, medium. No, I don't think anything else was sent to that throw. The hook lead was. It has a throw on it, and the lead, and just the lead vocal. So, and the hook lead is really just another bus for the lead. So yeah, just those lead vocals went there.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hey, my name's Ras. Nice
What's up,
meeting
Ras?
you. I really like the mix. It's an excellent mix.
Thank you.
But I wanted to ask more about the dynamic processing. I remember you said you threw a 737 Avalon on her vocals. I mean, when you're tracking vocals, do you like tend to always have some sort of, dynamic processing, or like that was my question really.
That's a really good question.
When I'm tracking vocals, I mean, everybody's chain is a little bit different. For her, it was an Avalon. Sometimes I would just use the Avalon, but usually it was Avalon into 1176. Okay. And anytime I needed to, if she was going to get loud, I would, pull back on the Avalon. Because the 1176, it's got a smooth knob too, but because it's more of vintage piece of gear, you get like dust when you move it. The dusty,
Yeah, they're all like that. That's part of the design.
Yeah, I mean, that was really my primary reason for using the 737. Usually I like it on rappers. And singers, I mean, there's a 1073, is an ideal thing for most singers for me. 1073 into CL1B, that's like Alicia Keys' main chain. But for her, you can't do it because you got to find another way to
control
the input. Yeah. So.
What microphone were you using for that one?
Oh, great question. With her, we used a vintage C24, which is basically a C12, Beautiful. But it's a stereo capsule, but we're only using one capsule. Okay. Would not have been my mic of choice, only because they don't make any new ones. There's no reissues, and they're really hard to find.
You mean for like if you had to overdub anything and match it, or?
Yeah, like if we were at another studio, sometimes not every studio has it. I mean, we went to Australia, and I had no idea how that trip was gonna go. Jay and Kanye were working on Watch a Throne, and great project. And I got to Sydney, and then I find out that we're not in a studio, we're in a house. I was like, I didn't bring any gear. I thought that we would be in a nice studio and have people to go and handle
resources.
And we weren't. Kanye rented some gorgeous mansion, and they had like a theater room upstairs that B and I were in, while Jay and Kanye were down in the living room. So there's we needed like at least a floor of separation because they had a ton of gear. Like Mike Dean was, producing a lot of that stuff, and he just brought everything over. So when I was out there was literally only one C24 in Sydney, and I had to track down the guy who has it.
Oh, wow.
And it was like so old, and you had to fidget with the power supply to get it to sound because it wouldn't work, and then you gotta, like, it was very rickety. But
now, was this on the same song? Or
no,
was this
this is just the album in general.
Okay.
I can't remember. I don't think we did any additional vocals on this in Sydney. But when you're doing a whole album and you want to, the same sound across the board, you kind of want to use the same chain. So I can get a 737 anywhere, but the C24 was harder. And the reason we picked the C24 is at the beginning of the album, we were at MSR Studios, which used to be Right Track and Legacy. And I just had them set up like 7 of their best vocal mics, and I had her cut a line in each, and I said, you pick. And that was the one she picked, so.
Very interesting. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
To go off on the question from the previous gentleman about using compression all the time, or whether you choose to do it in the recording, and that's a question we get all the time from students, because a lot of the times people are told when they're first learning to kind of go the purist route and not to sacrifice doing something bad that could potentially not be undone. Do you find yourself also EQing as well, or it's just
I usually don't EQ on the way in, but I definitely compress.
Would you say most of the time you're compressing? for the kind of music you're working on?
For vocals?
Yeah.
Every time.
Okay.
Every time. Just because if I don't do it on the way in, when I do vocal rides, when I'm mixing the record, it's just going to take 3 times as long. Like this was recorded really well. You know, you can see like there's a pretty decent level. Now these are backgrounds, so they're a little more smoother, but even on her lead, there's not a whole lot of, like jumpiness. Like there's a pretty solid level there. So then it makes it easier. You can just get those little syllables. Maybe one, a puss sound is a little loud, or like a whatever. You can go and get every single syllable exactly the level you want. So if I didn't compress on the way in, that would take just hours and hours and hours.
Good point.
So, yeah.
I kind of had a 2-part question.
Okay.
So you mentioned having a lot of bass frequencies from kick drum and bass, and I saw that you had a bunch of program kicks.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, is there like a certain process you go to figure out like which frequencies are going to be designated to which kick drum? And then also, the second part of that question was, is there a reason why you didn't make the first kick track, since it's stereo and it has the same information, why you didn't just split it to mono?
Good question.
Well, that's more work. It came to me this way. So, splitting it to mono, I mean, it's the same thing. If I took this as mono, first of all, I think it is stereo. Yeah. Like, there's definitely reverb on it, so there is an image. But let's say there wasn't, it was stereo, but it was really just a mono signal. By splitting it into mono, all I'm doing is lowering it 3 dB. It's the same thing.
So you're just going to have to raise the fader to compensate for it.
Yeah, or lower the fader, whatever it is. So it's just another step that I would need to do that doesn't change the sound at all.
That's a good question.
Yeah, and as far as like programming kicks, sometimes there's songs where there's just way too much stuff. Let me hear. So, this one's adding a little bit of dirt to it, but you still have the low end. Then this adds a little more thump on the transient. And then that just adds a little bit of boominess. And those are completely different than this, which, so together they worked. Right? But sometimes I'll get a session where there's too much program stuff, and I'll take tracks out and I'll just mute them. So, yeah, it really just depends on the song.
You find that some of the stuff might be a little redundant, like this is kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I was a producer first, and then engineering, I really learned how to, I got to work with every producer, Swiss and Pharrell and, all these really talented producers. And I got to learn how they all put records together. So now when I mix, I really mix from the perspective of a producer a lot of times, when it's appropriate, of course. Sometimes you have to make those creative decisions that a producer might normally make, but they're not in the room with you. So, if it's adding kicks or taking things away, and being a producer, I've sort of trained that side of, my ear.
Speaking of,
Thank you.
Because you were talking about Pharrell and Swiss Beats, and because you did work on the Magna Carta album. Mm-hmm. You did, I believe one of them was BBC, right? One of the tracks.
Yeah. Well, BBC. I worked on the mix side of things. I did some engineering and arrangement. Oceans was the first song that I cut.
Frank Ocean. Yeah.
And I love that song. So that was a Pharrell record, and that was the first song he cut for the album, and that was during some of the Beyonce stuff. And Frank was there, and Frank wrote the song or wrote the hook that day, and Jay cut one verse, and then maybe a month later he called me in and we cut a second verse on it. So nice. Yeah, but that's kind of a unique Pharrell track. It didn't really sound like, I didn't think it was Pharrell when I first heard it, but
when I heard it, I wouldn't have thought
he's
that.
like so talented, he could just do anything he wants.
But was that BBC track?
BBC was also Pharrell.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought I heard Timbaland in the background.
Yeah, well, Tim was around for that whole album,
got it.
he probably showed up and did some ad libs or.
It sounds like a Timberland kick, but it has the Pharrell vibe on it. So
Yeah, no, well, he definitely added some drums on certain songs.
That's where that came from.
I think he added a kick on Oceans as well.
Gotcha.
And Duro mixed that song, so it was really kind of interesting. I recorded it, and my mentor sort of mixed it. It was,
Nice.
So
Came full circle.
yeah.
All right, another question.
Yes. When you're both recording and mixing a song, do you find that the lack of objectivity helps you or hurts? And
Good
how?
question.
It's funny, on the car ride over here, John and I were talking about it. It really depends. If I've been working on a song a long time, sometimes you just want an outside ear. You want a second opinion. But if the recording comes together relatively quickly and it's sort of still new and fresh, then you can get into mixing pretty easily. And I even find like songs that I'm writing or producing, sometimes I'll mix it, and other times I may just want somebody else to touch it because I'm too close to it. So it's really a track by track, song by song basis for that.
Thank you.
I apologize, but we got the red light, so our
Really?
fun is going to have to end here. I know.
Oh, I was gonna ask about Beyonce.
I know. Well, fortunately, we anticipated all of these questions because obviously we're all so passionate about this stuff.
I think there was talk about doing like a meet and greet thing where like I'll literally sit and answer every single question you guys have. Like I have no
he's
problem.
cool like
so
that.
I have nowhere to go. So
Let's give it up one more time for our guest.
thank you.